John, healthcare is the third best performing sector year to date, arguably driven by obesity drugs. You've got your large cap pharma mid-year outlook out now, and you're looking at a few things: headwinds, for example, growth, and anticipated catalysts going into the second half. So let's maybe first talk about headwinds in the second half, and what do you think?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Rod. I guess it's quite unusual. We're sitting here in the US presidential election year, right? And I can certainly remember the last 4 or 5 of those where healthcare has been absolutely front and center. And we've been concerned, a lot of things talked about. It's not happened this time. And it's not happened. And we're not concerned because of one thing, and that's the Inflation Reduction Act. It was enacted in 2022. One of the parts of that is that as a result of Medicare spend, that the major drugs under Medicare spend, they are going to see some significant price cuts. So we know about that. We don't know the exact percentage at the moment, but nevertheless, that is relatively fixed. It's a popular, very, very popular policy. So we don't expect to see any major changes there. So not a concern there, any change there from that perspective. In terms of patent threats, sure, but that's part of doing business in the industry. So again, nothing really new from that point of view. Again, litigation, sure, at the moment we've got Zantac litigation ongoing that Holly Froome, leading our litigation team, is writing about. But again, it's part of doing business in this sector overall. And then there's pressure on companies who are conglomerate type, the likes of Bayer currently. They're in the crosshairs of many. Why aren't they splitting up? But again, this is something we've seen for many, many years. FX continues to be something we have to look at. But really, the sum total of all of this is pressures continue to exist. Of course they do, but they're not getting any worse. The environment is certainly not deteriorating for pharma.
Okay, and if we move on to growth, how's the outlook there?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned at the top of your comments here that pharma's been a strong performing sector. Indeed, it has, and driven certainly by the obesity players, Novo and Lilly. In fact, they're up 40 and 50% year to date. On the other end of it, we've got Bayer and Bristol off around about 20%. So we have got a real big divergence in terms of share price performance. And that's actually reflected in the growth rates as well, because if you step back and just look big picture right now for the industry, it over the next 5 years is going to give you around 4% top line growth and around about 7% earnings growth. But again, large divergence. So at the top end here, you've got the obesity players that we've mentioned. They're going to do high teens revenue growth and 20% plus earnings growth. And then at the far end, again, Bayer and Bristol. Bayer because of patent concerns and crop science issues. Bristol because of patent concerns. We don't believe that they're going to be driving any growth at all. Probably a decline if you look at consensus numbers there. We also, though, in the note, we look at what might drive a re-rating for some of these stocks, right? They haven't performed well, so what might drive a re-rating? And we look at some of the things there. And in many cases, it's about positive catalysts. So if we look at Roche, they need some positive pipeline catalysts, for example. At Bristol, they really need to convince over the mid to long-term growth outlook. And Bayer, they have to convince that with a new CEO, with a new management structure, that is a credible alternative or a credible outlook going forward.
And then I guess no sector outlook would be complete without touching on catalysts. So what should our listeners be looking out for into the second half?
Yeah, I mean, first off, we have a bit of fun and try and, for all the large caps, we predict 1 or 2 catalysts going forward. So I encourage people to maybe have a look for themselves and see if they agree or disagree. I mean, on the positive side, Merck's clesrovimab in RSV, we're positive on that. Also, Novo's CagriSema, obesity data there, and nipocalimab from J&J and myasthenia gravis. We've got less conviction over things like Bristol's Opdualag, tolebrutinib at Sanofi and MS, and also Roche's Skyscraper-01 study for tiragolumab, which is important for it and the class. Elsewhere, obesity and MASH going to continue to be a really big space. And Mike Shah, my colleague, he just came out with a note looking at the size of the obesity market, 93 billion in 2030. So please take a look at that note. RSV, as I mentioned, a pre-filled syringe from Moderna coming to market again, looks really interesting. How will that compete with the current incumbents from GSK and Pfizer? But as always, lots of catalysts in the sector for the second half, and also looking into 2025. Lots of excitement, we think.
As ever in pharma. John, thanks a lot for your time. Appreciate it.